The text message arrived at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday that would change everything. I was lying in bed staring at the ceiling while Emma pretended to sleep beside me, when my phone buzzed with a message from our 15-year-old son, Ben. "Dad, we need to talk. It's about Mom. I have proof." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My stomach dropped, like a stone thrown into dark water. For months, I'd been telling myself I was paranoid. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, the way Emma's eyes wouldn't meet mine anymore. The way my oldest friend Jason Carter had been coming around more often, always with some excuse about needing to discuss company business. I'm Greg Mitchell, 42 years old, CEO of TechFlow Solutions here in Westbrook, just outside Portland, Maine. I built my company from nothing, turning a basement startup into a multi-million-dollar operation with 37 employees. I'm the guy people underestimate at first glance: average height, thinning hair, wire-rimmed glasses that make me look more like an accountant than a tech mogul. But underestimating me has always been other people's first mistake. I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Emma, and padded downstairs to Ben's room. He was sitting at his computer, his face illuminated by the blue glow of multiple monitors. Kid's a tech genius, just like his old man. "Show me," I whispered. Ben's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up a folder labeled School Project. Inside were dozens of photos, all time-stamped and geotagged. My wife Emma and my best friend Jason Carter, together at the Riverside Motel on Route 302, kissing in the parking lot. Entering room 237. Emma's distinctive red Honda Civic parked next to Jason's black BMW. "I followed her last Thursday when she said she was meeting her writing group," Ben said quietly, his voice shaking. "Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't want to be right." I stared at the photos, feeling something cold and calculating settle in my chest where my heart used to be. 20 years of marriage, 15 years of friendship with Jason, who'd been my best man, my business partner, the guy I'd trusted with my company's sales division and my family's secrets. "How long?" I asked. "At least 3 months, based on what I've documented. Maybe longer." I copied the photos to my own encrypted drive, my mind already working through the implications. Emma thought she was married to a pushover, a workaholic who was too busy with spreadsheets and server maintenance to notice his wife's betrayal. Jason thought he was smarter than me, smooth enough to seduce my wife right under my nose while smiling to my face every day at work. They were both about to learn that the quiet, methodical approach that built my business could also destroy their lives with surgical precision. "Ben," I said, putting my hand on his shoulder, "you did the right thing telling me. But from now on, you don't mention this to anyone, especially your mother. Can you do that for me?" He nodded, his young face serious. "What are you going to do, Dad?" I looked back at the photos one more time, memorizing every detail. Emma's face flushed with excitement I hadn't seen in years. Jason's predatory smile as he put his arm around my wife. I'm going to remind them both that I'm the last person they should have decided to screw over. The next morning, I sat at our kitchen table, sipping coffee and watching Emma butter her toast with the same hands that had been all over Jason Carter 18 hours earlier. She was humming softly, actually humming, like she didn't have a care in the world. "Good morning, honey," she said, without looking up from her phone. "I might be late tonight. Kim and I are working on that article about sustainable living for Portland Monthly." Kim Hartwell, her best friend and fellow freelance writer, another lie to add to the growing collection. I'd already checked. Portland Monthly hadn't published anything by Emma Mitchell in 8 months. "That's fine," I said, keeping my voice level. "I'll probably be late too. Jason and I need to go over the quarterly sales figures." For just a moment, Emma's fingers stopped moving across her phone screen. Then she resumed typing, but I caught the slight flush that crept up her neck. "How is Jason doing?" she asked, her tone carefully casual. Sophie mentioned he's been working a lot of late nights lately. Sophie Carter, Jason's wife of 16 years. Poor woman had no idea her husband was spending those late nights in cheap motel rooms with my wife. Jason's fine, I replied. Dedicated employee. Really throws himself into his work. At the office, I called my assistant Maggie into my private conference room. Maggie Rodriguez. No, wait, that name doesn't work. Maggie Sullivan. She's 28, sharp as a razor, and has been with TechFlow since she graduated from UMaine with degrees in business and computer science. More importantly, she's fiercely loyal and doesn't ask unnecessary questions. I need you to run a comprehensive audit on all sales department activities for the past 6 months, I told her. Focus on Jason Carter's accounts specifically, client communications, expense reports, travel vouchers, everything. Maggie raised an eyebrow. Looking for anything in particular? Let's just say I want to make sure all our employees are maintaining the highest professional standards. She nodded, understanding the subtext. I'll have a preliminary report by end of business today. And Maggie? This stays between us for now. Of course, Greg. While Maggie dove into Jason's professional life, I started working on Emma's financial independence. As the primary account holder on all our credit cards and bank accounts, I had the authority to make certain adjustments. Nothing illegal, nothing that would raise red flags with the banks, but enough to make Emma's secret life significantly more complicated. I called our credit card company and reported Emma's cards as potentially compromised, requesting they be frozen pending new cards being issued. Then I contacted our bank and moved the majority of our joint checking account into a business account that only I controlled. Again, perfectly legal since I was the primary earner and account holder. By lunchtime, Emma had called me 3 times about her cards being declined. I let each call go to voicemail, then texted back, "Weird technical issue with the bank, I'll sort it out tomorrow." But I wasn't going to sort it out tomorrow, or the day after. Emma wanted to play games? Fine. Let's see how much fun she had playing them without access to my money. That afternoon, Jason knocked on my office door, his usual confident smile in place. He was everything I wasn't. 6'2", full head of dark hair, the kind of natural charisma that made clients trust him instantly. For 15 years, I'd valued those qualities. Now they made me sick. "Hey, Greg, got a minute? I wanted to run some ideas by you for the Henderson account." "Sure, come in." I gestured to the chair across from my desk, the same chair where he'd sat hundreds of times before, planning strategies to grow our business while secretly planning to destroy my marriage. "So I was thinking," Jason continued, settling into the chair with easy confidence, "maybe we could take the Hendersons out for dinner next week. You know, really wine and dine them. Maybe bring the wives along, make it a double date kind of thing." The audacity was breathtaking. He wanted to take Emma and me out for dinner while he was sleeping with my wife. The worst part was the genuine enthusiasm in his voice, like he was excited about the prospect. "That's an interesting idea," I said slowly. "Though Emma's been pretty busy with her writing lately. Lots of late nights, weekend meetings with her editor. You know how it is." I watched Jason's face carefully. There it was, just a slight tightening around his eyes, a barely perceptible shift in his posture, guilt and excitement warring with each other. "Yeah, Sophie's been busy too," he said. "Actually, she's been asking about Emma. They should get together soon, catch up on things." "I'm sure they should," I agreed. "I'm sure Emma would love to tell Sophie all about what she's been up to lately." Jason left my office 20 minutes later, and I immediately opened my laptop to review the security footage from our parking garage. TechFlow's building has cameras everywhere, a necessity when you're dealing with sensitive client data and expensive equipment. I'd never thought I'd be using them to spy on my own wife and best friend, but life has a way of surprising you. There they were, clear as day on last Thursday's footage. Emma arriving at 6:30 p.m., long after normal business hours, Jason meeting her by the elevator, his hand on the small of her back as they walked toward his BMW. The timestamp showed they left together at 6:47 p.m., plenty of time to drive to the Riverside Motel for their sordid little rendezvous. I saved the footage to my encrypted drive, adding it to Ben's photos and the growing file of evidence I was building. Not for court. I wasn't planning to divorce Emma. That would be too easy, too clean. Divorce would let her play the victim, let her tell everyone that her cold, workaholic husband had driven her into another man's arms. No, I had something much more satisfying in mind. I was going to destroy both of their reputations so thoroughly that they'd be social pariahs in this town. I was going to make them unemployable, unfriendable, and utterly miserable. And I was going to do it all without breaking a single law. By the time I was finished with Emma Mitchell and Jason Carter, they'd wish I had just divorced them instead. Friday night, I followed them. Emma had texted me at 4 p.m. Working late at Kim's house on the Portland Monthly piece, Don't Wait Up. 3 exclamation points. She was practically giddy with excitement about her secret date. I parked across the street from our house and waited. At 6:15, Emma emerged wearing the black dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year, the one she claimed was too fancy for our dinner at Oceanside Restaurant. Apparently, it was just fancy enough for screwing my best friend at a dive motel. She drove straight to Jason's apartment complex on Riverside Drive. He was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against his BMW like some kind of low-rent James Bond. They kissed right there in the open, Emma's hands running through his hair with a passion I hadn't seen from her in years. They drove separately to Murphy's Tavern, a rundown bar on the outskirts of town where the lighting was dim and the clientele minded their own business. I parked 3 spaces away from Jason's BMW and waited in the shadows. For 2 hours, I watched them through the grimy windows, laughing and touching each other like teenagers. Emma threw her head back at something Jason said, her laugh carrying across the parking lot. When was the last time I'd made her laugh like that? When was the last time she'd looked at me with anything other than mild irritation or complete indifference? The rational part of my brain knew that marriages sometimes died slow, natural deaths. People grew apart, stopped communicating, stopped trying. But the cold, angry part of my brain, the part that was growing stronger by the hour, didn't care about marriage counseling or working things out. That part wanted blood. When they finally stumbled out of the bar at 10:30, clearly having had more than a few drinks, I was ready. I waited until they were back inside the bar after Jason had walked Emma to her car for what looked like a very intimate goodbye. Then I got to work. Jason's BMW was his pride and joy, a sleek black 5 Series that he washed every weekend and parked in the farthest corner of every parking lot to avoid door dings. He'd bought it the same month TechFlow had our biggest sales quarter ever, claiming he needed to look successful to attract high-end clients. I pulled out my keys and carved cheater in neat, precise letters across the driver's side door. Then, for good measure, I added liar on the passenger side. The metal scraped against metal with a satisfying screech that cut through the night air. I was back in my car, engine running, when Jason emerged from the bar 10 minutes later. The scream of rage that erupted from his throat when he saw his car was audible even through my closed windows. He spun around, looking for witnesses, his face twisted with fury in the orange glow of the parking lot lights. I rolled down my window and snapped 3 photos with my phone's telephoto lens. Jason Carter, pillar of the community and trusted family friend, having a complete meltdown in a seedy bar parking lot. These would look great posted anonymously on the TechFlow company social media pages. Emma emerged from the bar a few seconds later, took one look at the car, and immediately started scanning the parking lot. For a moment, her eyes passed right over my sedan without recognition. Then Jason grabbed her arm and pulled her toward his damaged BMW, both of them talking in heated whispers. I started my engine and drove home, leaving them to figure out their own transportation situation. Let Emma explain to her Uber driver why she was getting picked up at Murphy's Tavern at 11 p.m. on a Friday night, when she was supposed to be working on articles about sustainable living. The next morning, I was drinking coffee in my kitchen when my phone rang. Jason's name appeared on the caller ID, and I let it ring 4 times before answering. "Hey, Jason, you're up early for a Saturday." "Greg, you're not going to believe this. Some psycho vandalized my car last night. Keyed the hell out of it while I was having dinner." "That's terrible," I said, injecting just the right amount of concern into my voice. "Where were you having dinner?" A pause. "Just a place downtown. Anyway, I think it might be connected to that Henderson account. Maybe one of their competitors is trying to send a message." "By vandalizing your car? That seems like a stretch, Jason. You'd be surprised how dirty some of these corporate types can play. I'm going to file a police report. Maybe hire a private investigator." I almost laughed out loud. A private investigator for keyed car doors? Isn't that a bit much? "It's the principle of the thing, Greg. Nobody messes with my property and gets away with it." "Absolutely," I agreed. "I hope you catch whoever did it." After I hung up, I sat back in my chair and smiled. Jason Carter, the smooth-talking ladies' man who thought he was untouchable, was rattled. He was looking over his shoulder, jumping at shadows, wondering who knew his secrets. And this was just the beginning. Emma came downstairs an hour later, moving slowly and squinting against the morning light. She'd clearly had more to drink than usual the night before. "How was your work session with Kim?" I asked innocently. "Fine," she mumbled, pouring herself coffee with shaking hands. "We got a lot done on the article." "That's great. Kim's such a dedicated friend, staying up so late to help you with your writing." Emma's cup rattled against the saucer as she set it down. "Yeah, she's very dedicated." I pulled out my phone and opened the photos I'd taken the night before, making sure the screen was angled so Emma could see Jason's furious face clearly. "Look at this," I said, showing her the phone. "Someone vandalized Jason's car last night. Can you believe that? Who would do such a thing?" Emma's face went white as she stared at the photo. That's terrible. Poor Jason. "I know, right? He was just having dinner somewhere downtown, minding his own business. Some people have no respect for other people's property." I watched Emma struggle to compose herself, her mind clearly racing through the implications. If someone had vandalized Jason's car, had that same someone seen them together? Did someone know about their affair? "I should probably call Sophie," Emma said finally. "See if there's anything we can do to help." "That's very thoughtful of you," I said. "I'm sure Sophie would appreciate knowing that you care so much about Jason's well-being." Emma fled upstairs without another word, and I heard our bedroom door slam shut. A few minutes later, I heard her voice through the ceiling, talking rapidly in the hushed tones people use when they're trying not to be overheard, calling Jason, no doubt, trying to figure out if their secret was still safe. It wasn't, but they didn't know that yet. I finished my coffee and opened my laptop to begin phase 2 of my plan. Jason wanted to hire a private investigator? Fine. Let's see how he felt when his own life came under investigation. Monday morning brought Maggie's preliminary audit report, and it was even better than I'd hoped. Jason hadn't been embezzling money or falsifying expense reports. He was too smart for anything that obvious. But he had been sloppy in other ways. "Look at this pattern," Maggie said, spreading printouts across my conference table. "For the past 3 months, Jason's been scheduling client meetings on Thursday evenings. Always Thursdays, always at restaurants that don't actually exist." I leaned forward, studying the reports. "What do you mean, don't exist?" "Chez Laurent on Commercial Street, Bella Vista on Exchange Street, Romano's on Forest Avenue. I called every one of them. Half are closed businesses, the other half never existed in the first place, but Jason's been claiming meal reimbursements for all of them." It was perfect. Jason had been creating fake business dinners to cover his Thursday night motel meetings with Emma, and in doing so, he'd been committing expense fraud. Nothing major, maybe $800 total over 3 months, but enough to justify termination for cause. There's more, Maggie continued. Jason's been using his company credit card for gas purchases on Route 302, always on Thursday nights, the same route you'd take to get to the Riverside Motel. I sat back in my chair, feeling that cold satisfaction spread through my chest again. Jason thought he was being clever, creating a paper trail that showed him having legitimate business meetings. Instead, he'd created a perfect record of his affair with my wife. Maggie, I want you to prepare a formal report documenting all of these irregularities, and schedule a department meeting for this afternoon. All hands, mandatory attendance. Including Jason? Especially Jason. While Maggie worked on the report, I made a few phone calls of my own. The first was to our company's insurance provider, informing them that we'd discovered potential fraud in our expense reporting and would be conducting a thorough internal investigation. The second was to our corporate attorney, asking about the proper procedures for terminating an employee for cause. The third call was to Kim Hartwell. Kim, hi, it's Greg Mitchell, Emma's husband. Oh, hi, Greg. How are you? Kim's voice was bright and cheerful. She genuinely liked me, which was going to make this conversation even more satisfying. I'm doing well, thanks. Listen, I wanted to thank you for all the help you've been giving Emma with her writing lately. She's been coming home so energized from your work sessions. A pause. Work sessions? Yeah, the Portland Monthly article you two have been collaborating on. Emma's been staying late at your house almost every Thursday night, working on the sustainable living piece. The silence stretched long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. Then Kim cleared her throat. Greg, I think there might be some confusion. Emma and I haven't worked on anything together in months. And Portland Monthly isn't publishing any articles about sustainable living that I know of. Really? That's strange. Emma specifically mentioned working at your house last Thursday night. She didn't get home until almost midnight. I was at my book club last Thursday night until 10, then home with Marcus watching Netflix. Emma definitely wasn't here. I let that hang in the air for a moment, giving Kim time to process the implications. Well, I said finally, I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. Maybe I got the details mixed up. You know how it is when you're juggling so many projects. Yeah, Kim said slowly. Maybe. But I could hear the doubt in her voice, the wheels turning as she started to wonder where Emma Mitchell had really been spending her Thursday nights. The department meeting that afternoon was a thing of beauty. I'd arranged the conference room carefully, Jason's usual seat directly across from me, with the wall-mounted monitor positioned so everyone could see the expense reports clearly. I've called this meeting, I began, because our recent internal audit has revealed some concerning irregularities in our expense reporting procedures. I clicked to the first slide, showing a summary of Jason's fake restaurant claims. Jason's face went pale as he recognized his own expense reports displayed for the entire department to see. As you can see, I continued, we have multiple claims for business meals at restaurants that either don't exist or have been closed for years. This represents a clear violation of company policy and potentially fraudulent use of corporate resources. Jason started to stand up. Greg, I can explain. Please hold your questions until the end of the presentation, Jason. The next slide showed the gas purchase pattern on Route 302, with dates and times clearly marked. Several people in the room started whispering among themselves. Everyone knew Route 302 led to the casino and the strip of cheap motels that catered to gamblers and people having affairs. Furthermore, I said, we have a pattern of suspicious travel that doesn't correspond to any known business activities or client locations. By the time I finished the presentation, Jason looked like he was going to be sick. The rest of the department was staring at him with a mixture of shock and disgust. These were people who'd worked with Jason for years, who'd trusted him to represent the company with integrity. Jason, I said, my voice calm and professional, effective immediately, You're suspended pending a full investigation into these irregularities. Please clear out your desk and surrender your company credit card, parking pass, and building access key to Maggie. Greg, please let me explain. This is all a misunderstanding. Security will escort you to your desk and then to your car. Any personal items you're unable to collect today can be picked up tomorrow between 9 and 5 with a security escort. I watched Jason's face crumble as the reality of his situation hit him. 15 years of friendship, gone. A 6-figure salary, gone. His reputation in the tight-knit Portland business community, gone. All because he couldn't keep his hands off my wife. As security escorted Jason out of the building, I caught sight of Emma's red Honda Civic in the visitor parking area. She'd been waiting to meet Jason after work, probably planning another romantic evening at their seedy motel. Instead, she got to watch her lover being marched out of the building in disgrace, carrying his personal belongings in a cardboard box. I walked to my office window and watched as Emma got out of her car and approached Jason in the parking lot. Even from 4 stories up, I could see the animated conversation, the wild gesturing, the obvious panic in both their postures. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "What happened to Jason? He says he's been fired." I typed back, "Expense fraud. Quite serious, actually. I'll be working late tonight dealing with the fallout. Don't wait up." Then I turned off my phone and poured myself a scotch from the bottle I kept in my desk drawer. Through my window, I watched Emma and Jason argue in the parking lot for another 10 minutes before she finally got back in her car and drove away. Jason stood alone next to his keyed BMW for a long time after that, staring up at the TechFlow building like he was trying to figure out how his life had fallen apart so quickly. I raised my glass in a mock toast. "Here's to you, Jason. Hope she was worth it." Emma was waiting for me when I got home that night, pacing the kitchen like a caged animal. Her eyes were red-rimmed and puffy. She'd been crying. "We need to talk," she said the moment I walked through the door. "About what?" "About Jason. About why you fired him. Greg, this is insane. Jason would never commit fraud. You've known him for 15 years. I set my briefcase down carefully and loosened my tie. "I've known a lot of people for a long time, Emma. That doesn't mean they're incapable of disappointing me. But expense fraud? That's not like Jason at all." "How would you know what Jason is or isn't like?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "When was the last time you even talked to him?" Emma's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Sophie and I talk sometimes and she mentions Sophie." I nodded slowly. "Right. How is Sophie handling all this? Her husband being fired for fraud, I mean. That must be devastating for their family." "I don't know. I haven't talked to her yet." "You should call her," I suggested. "I'm sure she could use a friend right now. Someone who understands what Jason's been going through lately." Emma stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the wheels turning behind her eyes. She was trying to figure out how much I knew, how much danger she was in. "Greg," she said finally, "is there something you want to ask me?" It was the perfect opening. I could have confronted her right then, laid out all the evidence, demanded explanations and apologies, but that would have ended the game too quickly. Emma would have broken down, confessed everything, begged for forgiveness. Then we'd either go to marriage counseling or get divorced, and within a year everyone would have moved on with their lives. Instead, I smiled. "Just wondering if you think I made the right decision. Firing Jason, I mean. You seem pretty upset about it." "I'm not upset. I'm just surprised. It seems so sudden. These things usually are. One day everything's fine, the next day you discover that the people you trusted most have been lying to your face for months." Emma flinched like I'd slapped her. "Greg, I'm going to take a shower," I said, heading for the stairs. "Long day at the office." As I climbed the stairs, I heard Emma's phone buzz with an incoming call. By the time I reached the top, she was talking in hushed, urgent tones. "I don't know," she was saying. He's acting strange, but I don't think he knows anything specific. We just need to be more careful. I smiled and went to take my shower. Let them think they were still being careful. Let them think their secret was still safe. The harder they worked to hide their affair, the more suspicious they'd become to everyone around them. Over the next few days, I watched Emma's social circle begin to crumble. It started with Kim, who'd been thinking about our phone conversation all weekend. "Emma," Kim said when she called Tuesday morning, "Marcus and I were talking, and we're both a little confused about something. You told Greg you were working on an article at my house last Thursday night, but you weren't here. Where were you, really?" I was in my home office, supposedly working, but I could hear every word of Emma's side of the conversation through the thin walls. Kim, that's complicated. I can't really explain right now. Can't explain or won't explain. Emma, if you're having problems at home, you know you can talk to me. But lying about where you've been, that's not like you. I'm not lying. I mean, not exactly lying. It's just, there are things going on that I can't discuss. Things like what? Emma, you're scaring me. Are you in some kind of trouble? The conversation went downhill from there. By the time Emma hung up, she was crying again, and Kim Hartwell, her closest friend for over a decade, was no longer speaking to her. I made sure the same thing happened with Emma's other friends. A casual comment to Marcus about Emma's writing projects when I ran into him at the grocery store. A concerned phone call to Jenny Walsh, asking if Emma had seemed different lately during their yoga classes. "Actually, Greg," Jenny said, "Emma hasn't been to yoga in weeks. She keeps canceling at the last minute, saying she has work commitments. But when I asked her about her writing projects, she got really vague and changed the subject." Within a week, Emma's entire social support system was questioning her honesty and wondering what she was hiding. The whispers started small, concerned friends sharing their confusion with other concerned friends, but they grew louder as more people compared notes. Emma Mitchell, who'd always been seen as the stable, trustworthy wife of a successful businessman, was suddenly the subject of speculation and gossip throughout our social circle. Meanwhile, Jason was dealing with his own problems. Word of his firing had spread quickly through Portland's business community, and the expense fraud allegations made him toxic to potential employers. No one wanted to hire someone who'd been terminated for stealing from his previous company, even if the amounts were relatively small. I made sure the story spread by having lunch with 3 different business contacts that week, each time expressing my disappointment and concern about having to let Jason go. 15 years of friendship, I told Dave Morrison from Portland Tech Solutions. I never would have believed Jason could do something like this. It just goes to show, you never really know people. That's terrible, Greg. What kind of fraud are we talking about? Fake expense reports, unauthorized use of company resources, nothing huge, but when you add it all up over several months, I shook my head sadly. I had to let him go. Couldn't risk the company's reputation. By Friday, Jason Carter was unemployable in Portland's tech sector. His reputation was destroyed, his marriage was strained by the sudden loss of income, and his former friends were avoiding him at the country club. But I wasn't done with either of them yet. The breaking point came on a Saturday afternoon at Ben's football game. Emma had been increasingly desperate all week, her behavior becoming more erratic as her lies caught up with her. She'd been calling Jason constantly, meeting him in secret to coordinate their stories, but their panic was making them sloppy. I was sitting in the bleachers watching Ben play quarterback for the Westbrook High Ravens when Emma's phone rang for the 5th time in an hour. She glanced at the screen, then at me, then stepped away from the bleachers to take the call. "I can't talk now," she said, but her voice carried clearly in the crisp October air. "Greg's right here. No, I don't think he knows anything. We just need to wait this out." When she returned to her seat, I was ready. "Everything okay?" I asked casually. "Fine. Just Kim, asking about the PTA fundraiser." "Funny," I said. "I talked to Kim yesterday. She mentioned you two haven't spoken since Tuesday. Emma's face went white. What do you mean? I mean, Kim told me she's concerned about you, says you've been lying to her about where you spend your time. She's worried you might be having some kind of breakdown. That's not true. She also mentioned that you haven't been to yoga in weeks, despite telling me every Thursday that you were going to yoga after your writing sessions with Kim. Emma started to stand up. Greg, I think there's been some misunderstanding. Sit down, Emma. Something in my voice made her freeze. Around us, other parents were cheering for their kids, completely unaware of the drama unfolding in the bleachers. I know about Jason, I said quietly. Emma sank back onto the bleacher seat like her legs had given out. What? I know about the Riverside Motel. I know about Thursday nights. I know about Murphy's Tavern and the fake writing sessions and the Portland Monthly article that doesn't exist. Greg, please let me explain. There's nothing to explain, Emma. You're sleeping with my best friend, and you've been lying to me about it for months. The only question is what we're going to do about it. Emma started crying then, right there in the bleachers with half the town watching their kids play football. But they weren't tears of remorse or guilt. They were tears of panic, the desperate sobs of someone who'd been caught and was trying to figure out how to minimize the damage. How long have you known? She whispered. Long enough. Are you going to divorce me? I looked out at the football field, where Ben had just thrown a perfect spiral for a touchdown. My son, who'd had the courage to tell me the truth when it would have been easier to stay silent. No, I said finally. I'm not going to divorce you, Emma. That would be too easy. What do you mean? I turned to look at her directly, and she flinched at whatever she saw in my eyes. I mean, you're going to learn what it feels like to lose everything that matters to you piece by piece, until you're left with nothing but the consequences of your choices. Greg, you're scaring me. Good. You should be scared. You should have been scared months ago, before you decided to betray 20 years of marriage for a few cheap thrills with Jason Carter. Emma's phone buzzed with another call from Jason. This time I reached over and answered it myself. Hello, Jason. A long pause. Greg, where's Emma? She's right here watching our son play football. You know, doing normal family things that normal married couples do together. Greg, I need to talk to Emma. No, Jason, you need to stay away from my wife. In fact, you need to stay away from my family entirely, because if I see you anywhere near Emma or Ben again, I'm going to make your current problems look like a minor inconvenience. I hung up and handed the phone back to Emma. If he calls again, don't answer. You can't control who I talk to. Watch me. The game ended with Westbrook winning 21-14, and Ben jogged over to the bleachers with a huge grin on his face. For a moment, seeing his excitement and pride, I almost forgot about Emma's betrayal. Did you see that last touchdown pass, Dad? I saw it, kiddo. Perfect spiral, right in the numbers. I'm proud of you. Ben looked back and forth between Emma and me, clearly sensing the tension. Everything okay? Everything's fine, I said, putting my arm around his shoulders. Your mom and I were just having an important conversation about honesty and consequences. As we walked to the parking lot, I noticed several other parents watching us with curious expressions. Word was already spreading about Emma's public breakdown in the bleachers, and by Monday morning, everyone in town would be speculating about what had caused Greg Mitchell's wife to start sobbing during a high school football game. Emma rode home in silence, staring out the passenger window while I drove. When we pulled into our driveway, she finally spoke. What happens now? Now you get to live with what you've done, I said, and so does Jason. Greg, please. I made a mistake, but we can work through this. We can go to counseling, start over. Start over? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Emma, you don't get to start over. You get to finish what you started. That night, Emma locked herself in our bedroom and didn't come out until morning. I could hear her on the phone, probably with Jason, trying to figure out damage control. but it was too late for damage control. The damage was done, and I was just getting started. Monday morning brought the news I'd been waiting for. Sophie Carter had filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences and adultery. The court documents were public record, and Jason's affair with Emma Mitchell was now officially part of the legal system. I learned about it from my lawyer, who called me at 8 a.m. with a heads up. "Greg, I thought you should know that Jason Carter's divorce filing mentions your wife specifically. Sophie's attorney has documented evidence of the affair, including hotel receipts and photographs." Photographs? Apparently Sophie hired a private investigator last week. She has pictures of Jason and Emma together at various locations around town. I almost felt sorry for Sophie. Almost. She was an innocent victim in all this, a decent woman who'd been married to a cheating scumbag for 16 years. But her pain was collateral damage in my war against Emma and Jason, and I couldn't afford to let sympathy derail my plans. "Thanks for the heads up, Bill. I appreciate you keeping me informed. Greg, you should probably know that Emma might be called as a witness in the divorce proceedings, and there's a possibility that Sophie might sue for alienation of affection." Maine was one of the few states that still allowed alienation of affection lawsuits. Essentially, Sophie could sue Emma for stealing her husband. It was an old-fashioned legal concept, but it still carried real consequences in terms of financial damages and public humiliation. "Let me know if Emma needs representation," I said. "I want to make sure she has the best possible legal counsel." What I didn't tell Bill was that I'd already decided Emma would be representing herself. Let her try to navigate the legal system alone while dealing with the social fallout of being publicly named as a homewrecker. By noon, the news had spread throughout our social circle. My phone was ringing constantly with friends and business associates offering their support and expressing their shock about Emma's affair. "Greg, I can't believe it," said Tom Bradley from the Chamber of Commerce. "Emma always seemed so devoted to you and Ben. I never would have suspected." "It's been a difficult time," I replied, playing the role of the wounded but dignified husband. "I'm just trying to focus on protecting Ben and keeping the business running. If there's anything Sarah and I can do to help, please don't hesitate to ask. You're a good man, Greg. You don't deserve this." The sympathy was gratifying, but it was nothing compared to the satisfaction of watching Emma's reputation disintegrate in real time. By Wednesday, she'd been dropped from the PTA board, uninvited from 3 upcoming social events, and quietly asked to step down from her volunteer position at the animal shelter. Emma tried to fight back, calling her former friends to explain her side of the story, but her explanations only made things worse. "I don't understand why everyone's being so judgmental," she complained to Jenny Walsh, not knowing that Jenny was recording the conversation on her phone. "Marriage is complicated. Greg and I have been having problems for years." "So you decided to solve those problems by sleeping with his best friend?" Jenny asked. "It wasn't planned. It just happened. Jason understood me in a way that Greg never did. He made me feel alive again." "Emma, you destroyed 2 marriages and ruined a 15-year friendship. How is that supposed to make anyone feel sorry for you?" The recording of that conversation was circulating through social media within hours, Emma's voice clearly audible as she tried to justify her affair by blaming me for not being understanding enough. Meanwhile, Jason was spiraling into complete social and professional exile. Unable to find work in Portland, he'd started applying for jobs in other cities, but word of his firing for expense fraud had followed him. His LinkedIn profile, once proudly displaying his sales achievements at TechFlow, now sat dormant and ignored. I made sure it stayed that way by reaching out to my network of business contacts in Boston, New York, and Philadelphia. "Just wanted to give you a heads up about Jason Carter," I'd say. "He used to work for me, and I'd hate for anyone to get blindsided the way I did. Expense fraud, extramarital affairs, general dishonesty. I know you value integrity in your organization." By Thursday, Jason had been rejected for 3 positions he was overqualified for, and the rejection letters all mentioned concerns about cultural fit and questions about professional integrity. That evening, I was working late at the office when security called to tell me that Jason Carter was in the lobby, demanding to see me. "Send him up," I said. Jason looked terrible when he walked into my office. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive suit was wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He'd lost weight, and his hands were shaking slightly, probably from too much caffeine and not enough sleep. "Greg, we need to talk." "Have a seat, Jason. You look like hell." He collapsed into the chair across from my desk, the same chair where he'd sat hundreds of times before when we were friends and business partners. "You're destroying my life," he said. "I'm not doing anything, Jason. You destroyed your own life when you decided to sleep with my wife. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Emma and I, we didn't plan it. It just happened. Things like this don't just happen, Jason. You made a choice. Every Thursday night for 3 months, you made the same choice over and over again." Jason leaned forward, his eyes desperate. "Greg, please, I know I screwed up. I know I betrayed your trust, but I'm begging you, call off the dogs. Stop blackballing me with other employers. Let me find a job somewhere else and start over." "Why would I do that?" "Because we were friends once. Because you're a decent man who doesn't want to see me completely destroyed." I stared at him for a long moment. This man who'd been my best friend, my best man, the person I'd trusted with my business and my family. "You're right about one thing, Jason. I am a decent man, which is why I gave you 15 years of friendship, trust, and partnership, and you threw it all away for a few cheap thrills with my wife." "Greg, I'm not finished." I stood up and walked around my desk, stopping directly in front of his chair. "You want to know what's going to happen to you, Jason? You're going to leave Portland because nobody here will ever trust you again. You're going to take whatever job you can find, probably making half what you made here, because your reputation is shot. And every day for the rest of your life, you're going to remember that you had everything: a successful career, a loving wife, respect in your community, and you traded it all for sex with someone else's wife." Jason's face crumpled. "Please, Greg, I'll do anything. I'll disappear, never contact Emma again, never come back to Portland. Just stop destroying me." "I'm not destroying you, Jason. I'm just making sure everyone knows exactly who you really are." He left my office without another word, and I watched from my window as he walked across the parking lot to his keyed BMW. He sat in the driver's seat for a long time before starting the engine, and I wondered if he was thinking about all the choices that had led him to this moment. The next morning, I heard from Maggie that Jason had put his house on the market and was planning to move to Florida, where his brother lived and where nobody knew about his affair or his firing. Emma, meanwhile, was discovering that being a social pariah was expensive. Without access to our joint credit cards or bank accounts, and with her freelance writing career effectively ended by her reputation, she was struggling to pay for basic necessities. "Greg," she said Friday morning, "I need money for groceries." "Get a job." "I'm trying to get a job, but every time I go for an interview, they've already heard about what happened. No one wants to hire me." "Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to have an affair." "This is insane. You can't just cut me off financially. I'm still your wife." "You're still my wife when it's convenient for you," I said. "But you weren't acting like my wife when you were screwing Jason Carter at the Riverside Motel every Thursday night." Emma stared at me with a mixture of hatred and desperation. "What do you want from me, Greg? What will it take for you to forgive me?" "I don't want anything from you, Emma. I just want you to live with the consequences of your choices." That afternoon, I got a call from Ben's school. Emma had shown up during lunch, crying and demanding to see her son. The school counselor was concerned about her emotional state and wanted to know if there were any family issues they should be aware of. "My wife and I are going through a difficult time," I explained. "She's been under a lot of stress lately, and it's affecting her judgment. I'd prefer if she didn't have unsupervised access to Ben during school hours." "Of course, Mr. Mitchell. We'll make a note in Ben's file. When Ben got home that afternoon, he was quiet and subdued. Mom came to school today, he said. She was crying and saying weird stuff about how everyone was being mean to her. What kind of weird stuff? She said you were trying to destroy her life and that Jason was innocent and that everyone in town was being unfair. Dad, is Mom okay? I looked at my 15-year-old son, who'd been forced to grow up too fast because of his mother's selfish choices. Your mom is dealing with the consequences of some very bad decisions she made, I said. Sometimes when people are caught doing wrong things, they try to blame everyone else instead of taking responsibility. Are you and Mom getting divorced? I don't know, Ben. Right now, I'm just focused on taking care of you and making sure you're okay. He nodded, but I could see the worry in his eyes. Emma's affair hadn't just destroyed our marriage. It had shattered our son's sense of security and trust in his family. That night, Emma didn't come home. She'd been staying at a cheap motel on the outskirts of town, the same kind of place where she'd carried on her affair with Jason. The irony wasn't lost on me. I sat in my home office reviewing the financial reports from TechFlow and planning the company's expansion into the Boston market. Life was moving forward, business was thriving, and I was building something positive from the ashes of my destroyed marriage. Emma Mitchell and Jason Carter had thought they could betray me without consequences. They'd thought I was too weak, too trusting, too focused on work to notice or fight back. They'd been wrong about everything. 3 months later, I was sitting in Murphy's Tavern, the same dive bar where I'd first keyed Jason's car, celebrating the biggest contract in TechFlow's history. The Henderson account that Jason had been so eager to wine and dine had signed with us for a 3-year, multi-million-dollar deal, and I'd negotiated it entirely on my own. Maggie raised her beer bottle in a toast. To Greg Mitchell, who proves that nice guys don't always finish last. Sometimes they just take a little longer to cross the finish line, I replied, clinking my bottle against hers. The bar was crowded with TechFlow employees and local business owners, all of them eager to congratulate me on the Henderson deal and express their continued support during my difficult personal situation. It was gratifying to see how the community had rallied around me while simultaneously ostracizing Emma and Jason. Greg! Dave Morrison from Portland Tech Solutions appeared at my elbow, slightly drunk and overly enthusiastic. I heard Emma's working at the Walmart out on Route 1 now, overnight stock crew. Can you believe that? From PTA president to midnight shelf stocker in 6 months. I'd heard the same thing from 3 other people that week. Emma had finally found employment, but it was minimum wage grunt work that required her to be at the store from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., stocking shelves and cleaning floors while the rest of the world slept. I hope she's finding the work fulfilling, I said diplomatically. Come on, Greg, you can admit it feels good to see her get what she deserves. After what she did to you? The woman's lucky you didn't take her to the cleaners in divorce court. The truth was, I still hadn't filed for divorce. Emma was living in a studio apartment above a pizza shop, working nights at Walmart, and spending her days trying to rebuild a life that everyone in town knew was built on lies and betrayal. Divorce would have ended her misery and given her a chance to start fresh somewhere else. I preferred to let her suffer in the wreckage of her choices. Speaking of Jason, Dave continued, I heard he's working at a call center in Tampa, selling insurance over the phone for $12 an hour. Can you imagine? Guy used to make 6 figures selling enterprise software. Now he's cold calling retirees about life insurance. I'd heard that rumor too, though I hadn't bothered to verify it. Jason Carter's fate was no longer my concern. He disappeared from Portland in February, selling his house at a loss and leaving behind 16 years of marriage, a successful career, and a reputation that had taken decades to build. Gentlemen, I said, finishing my beer, I appreciate the support, but I'd rather not spend the evening talking about ancient history. Tonight's about the future, TechFlow's future, Portland's future, and the bright prospects ahead of us. The crowd cheered and moved on to other topics, but I noticed several people still whispering about Emma and Jason throughout the evening. 6 months later, their affair was still the most scandalous thing to happen in our social circle, and people couldn't seem to stop talking about it. I left the bar around 10 p.m. and drove home through the quiet streets of Westbrook. Our house looked different now, cleaner, more organized, peaceful in a way it hadn't been when Emma was living there. Ben and I had developed our own routines, our own way of functioning as a family unit, and we were both happier without the constant tension of Emma's lies and deception. Ben was in his room when I got home, working on a computer programming project for his advanced placement computer science class. He'd inherited my technical aptitude and was already talking about studying software engineering in college. "How was the celebration, Dad?" "Good. The whole team's excited about the Henderson contract. It's going to mean a lot of opportunities for everyone." Ben nodded, but I could see something was bothering him. "What's on your mind, kiddo?" "I saw Mom today, at the grocery store." I sat down on his bed. "How did she seem?" "Tired, really tired and thin, like unhealthy thin. She tried to talk to me, but I didn't know what to say." "What did she want to talk about?" "She kept apologizing and saying she missed me. She asked if I thought you'd ever forgive her, if maybe we could all try to be a family again." I felt a familiar surge of anger at Emma's continued selfishness. Even now, after everything she'd done, she was still trying to manipulate our son's emotions to get what she wanted. "What did you tell her?" "I told her that actions have consequences, and that she made her choices. Same thing you taught me." I put my hand on Ben's shoulder. "I'm proud of you for handling that maturely. I know it couldn't have been easy." "Dad, do you think Mom will ever get her life back together?" It was a fair question, and Ben deserved an honest answer. "I think your mother is capable of rebuilding her life, if she's willing to take responsibility for her mistakes and work hard to earn people's trust again. But that's her choice to make, not ours." "Do you think she will?" I thought about Emma's behavior over the past 6 months, the continued lies, the attempts to blame everyone else for her problems, the refusal to accept responsibility for the pain she'd caused. "I don't know, Ben. I hope so for her sake. But hope isn't the same as expectation." The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. I was drinking coffee and reading the Portland Press-Herald when the doorbell rang. Through the front window, I could see Emma standing on my porch, looking nervous and exhausted. I opened the door, but didn't invite her in. "Hello, Emma." "Greg, I need to talk to you. Please." She looked terrible, thin and pale, with dark circles under her eyes, and the kind of desperate exhaustion that comes from working overnight shifts and sleeping during the day. Her clothes were clean but cheap, and her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail that made her look older than her 38 years. "What do you want?" "I want to apologize. Really apologize. Not just say the words, but mean them. Greg, I know what I did was unforgivable. I know I destroyed our marriage and hurt you and Ben in ways that can never be undone." I leaned against the doorframe, studying her face for signs of manipulation or deception. But all I saw was genuine remorse and bone-deep weariness. "Go on." "I've been thinking a lot over the past few months, working those overnight shifts with nothing but my thoughts for company. I realized that I was selfish and cruel and stupid. I threw away 20 years of marriage for a few months of excitement, and I hurt the two people who mattered most to me." "And Jason?" Emma's face tightened. "Jason was a mistake. A stupid, selfish mistake that I'll regret for the rest of my life. I haven't spoken to him since he left town, and I never want to see him again." "What do you want from me, Emma?" "I want to know if there's any chance, any possibility at all, that you could ever forgive me. Not forget what I did, because I know that's impossible. But forgive me enough that we could try to rebuild something together." I looked at this woman who'd been my wife for 20 years, the mother of my son, the person I'd once loved more than anyone else in the world. 6 months ago, I would have felt satisfaction seeing her brought so low. Now I just felt tired. "Emma," I said quietly, "you didn't just cheat on me. You lied to me every day for months. You made me doubt my own instincts, my own sanity. You involved our son in your deception by making him keep secrets. You destroyed my friendship with Jason and humiliated me in front of our entire community. I know I'm not finished." My voice was calm but firm. "You want to know if I can forgive you? The answer is maybe, eventually, for Ben's sake and for my own peace of mind. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It doesn't mean we get back together and pretend this never happened." Emma's face crumpled, but she didn't start crying. She just nodded, accepting the verdict she'd known was coming. "I understand," she said. I needed to ask. I needed to know if there was any hope." "There's always hope, Emma. Just not with me." She turned to leave, then stopped and looked back. "Greg, I want you to know that you're a good man, a better man than I deserved. I hope someday you'll find someone who appreciates that." After she left, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, thinking about forgiveness and consequences and the difference between justice and revenge. I'd spent 6 months systematically destroying Emma's life, and while she'd deserved every bit of it, I wasn't sure it had made me feel any better. But it had taught her, and everyone else in our community, that Greg Mitchell wasn't someone you could betray without consequences. And sometimes, that lesson was worth more than personal satisfaction. That afternoon, I called my lawyer. "Bill, I want to file for divorce. Keep it simple and clean. No alimony, joint custody of Ben, equitable division of assets. I'm not trying to destroy her financially. Just end the marriage legally." "Are you sure, Greg? You've been separated for 6 months. There's no rush." "I'm sure. It's time to close this chapter and move on." 3 weeks later, the divorce papers were signed and filed. Emma Mitchell became Emma Hartley again, taking back her maiden name along with her freedom. She moved to Burlington, Vermont, where her sister lived, and found work as a night manager at a hotel near the airport. Ben chose to stay with me in Westbrook, though he visited his mother once a month and talked to her regularly on the phone. Their relationship was slowly healing, built on a foundation of honesty that hadn't existed before. Jason Carter never returned to Maine. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he'd found work with a small software company in Orlando, making about half his previous salary, but slowly rebuilding his career. His divorce from Sophie had been finalized around the same time as mine from Emma, and he was reportedly dating a woman he'd met at his new job. As for me, I threw myself into expanding TechFlow and being the best father I could be to Ben. The company grew by 40% that year, and we opened a satellite office in Boston. I started dating again. Nothing serious, just dinner with interesting women who had no connection to my previous life. One evening in December, almost a year after Ben had first shown me those photographs, I was working late at the office when Maggie knocked on my door. "Greg, there's someone here to see you. Says he's an old friend." My blood ran cold for a moment, thinking it might be Jason. But the man who walked into my office was Dave Morrison, carrying a bottle of expensive scotch and wearing a huge grin. "Congratulations," he said, setting the bottle on my desk. "I just heard about the IBM contract. That's huge, Greg. Huge." The IBM deal was indeed huge. The biggest contract in TechFlow's history, worth over $10 million over 5 years. It would triple our workforce and establish us as one of the premier tech companies in northern New England. "Thanks, Dave. It's been a good year." "A good year? Greg, you've had the best year of anyone I know. Your company's exploding, your son's thriving, and you've handled everything with class and dignity. You should be proud." As Dave poured 2 glasses of scotch, I reflected on the events of the past year. Emma and Jason had thought they could betray me without consequences. They'd thought I was too weak, too trusting, too focused on work to fight back effectively. They'd learned otherwise. Emma was rebuilding her life in Vermont, working honest work, and slowly earning back her son's respect. Jason was starting over in Florida, his reputation destroyed, but his future still salvageable if he worked hard enough. And I was here in Maine, successful and respected, having proven that sometimes the quiet, methodical guys finish first after all. "You know what the best part is?" Dave said, raising his glass. "You got the last laugh without becoming the bad guy. Emma and Jason destroyed themselves. You just made sure everyone got to watch." I raised my own glass and smiled. "Here's to consequences, Dave, and to the people smart enough to avoid them. I'll drink to that." As we clinked glasses, I looked out my office window at the lights of Portland sparkling in the distance. Somewhere out there, Emma was probably getting ready for another night shift at her hotel, while Jason was settling into his modest apartment in Orlando. They'd both learned that actions have consequences, and that betraying Greg Mitchell was the biggest mistake of their lives. And I'd learned that sometimes the best revenge is simply letting people destroy themselves while you build something better from the wreckage they leave behind.